Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me for this professional development session titled Beyond the Grade, Rethinking Assessment in Secondary Mathematics. My goal today is to shift our thinking from traditional grading toward assessment strategies that are more meaningful, equitable, and learner-centered for our students. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kelly Miller, and I am from Central New Jersey. I have been a secondary mathematics teacher for the last 5 years after I graduated from the College of New Jersey in May of 2020. I have a passion for learner-centered instruction, student engagement, and professional collaboration. This professional development was born from my graduate studies at the American College of Education, where I am currently pursuing a master's degree in curriculum and instruction with a focus in mathematics. By the end of this session, you'll be able to clearly differentiate between formative and summative assessments while also getting to use examples of both. You'll be able to review rubrics for assessing mathematical thinking and reflect on how common assessments can really improve our teaching and learning through professional learning communities and collaboration. Why do we need to rethink assessment? Rick Stiggins, who's an educational assessment expert, once said, "Students can hit any target that they know and that stands still for them." He reminds us that we can't expect students to succeed if we're not clear about our expectations or if those expectations are always changing. So our job as teachers is to create a stable, transparent learning environment where we involve students in the learning process and they know exactly what to expect. A couple key points: assessment should really just guide the learning and not just be used as a grade for the gradebook. And especially with math, sometimes assessment overemphasizes speed and accuracy over actually learning the material and the reasoning behind it. First, we can start by distinguishing the two main types of assessments, formative and summative. So for formative assessments, these assessments guide the instruction while the learning is actually happening. So they are kind of like checkpoints along the way. Formative assessments provide a great way for teachers to take a step back and think about how they can improve their instruction for the remainder of the unit. It's also a great opportunity for students to reflect on their own learning and think about what they still need to work on to understand the material fully. Alternatively, summative assessments are more of a cumulative overview of what the students have learned throughout the entire unit. They're usually a little bit more high stakes, and it evaluates the overall instruction without much time for making changes. Both types of assessments are very important in the classroom, but we're going to have to figure out how to find a balance of both because they have very distinct purposes, but they're more powerful when they're used together. Here are a few examples of formative assessments that I use in my classroom. So exit tickets are more of a quick snapshot at the end of class. What did your students get from that lesson in particular? Error analysis helps my students learn from their mistakes and kind of deepen their understanding. Usually it's where they take on a different role and think more like the teacher. Self-assessment checklists empower students to reflect on their own progress and think about where they are in the learning process. And Think, Pair, Share is very informal. It's more of a verbal assessment where my students will look at each other and kind of talk after they've thought independently, and then once they feel comfortable with their ideas that they've shared with their partner, they share them out loud with the class. Formative assessments can be very simple, but they really give teachers a powerful tool and insight into how they can adjust their teaching going forward. Summative assessments, they often get a bad reputation because they are a little bit more high stakes, but they can be a very powerful tool as well. Unit tests are the most common summative assessment that we see in education. They're very standard and consist of questions such as multiple choice, short answer, or extended response. Math projects and performance tasks are not seen as often in the mathematics classroom as they should be, but they allow students to take a deeper look into the mathematics itself. Typically, with these two types of summative assessments, they are applying their mathematical skills to real-world situations. You may be wondering, how do I grade all of these assessments? Rubrics are a great tool to help us as educators assess more than just correct or incorrect answers. They allow us to make the expectations very clear up front, so we're being very transparent with our students. Rubrics break down the thinking process for students, so they're not just being scored on a correct answer, they're being scored on how they thought about the process and the mathematical journey they took to achieve the answer. There are two main types of rubrics. There's analytic rubrics, which resemble more of a grid, and all of the criteria is listed on the left with levels across the top, and each criteria is scored individually. Holistic rubrics provide more of a big picture approach. It is one scale and all of the criteria is considered together. If you are looking to give more detailed feedback, I would definitely recommend an analytic rubric. Here is an example of a rubric I created for an assignment for my assessment strategies course at the American College of Education. For this task in particular, students had to provide feedback to a peer during an error analysis assessment. As you can see, the criteria is broken down on the left, and each level is broken down across the top. A rubric like this makes sure that even if my students did not get the correct answer, I'm still celebrating the successes they did have if their thought process was correct and they had mathematical reasoning. Another part of assessments that has become more common recently are common assessments. Some of the benefits of common assessments are that they align instruction and support equity. It allows for more collaboration with colleagues in their professional learning communities. When all teachers use the same assessment, it's a lot easier to compare student performance and analyze areas where students may need additional support. Building common assessments may seem like a very daunting task, but when you break it down and work together, it can be very effective. Building strong common assessments starts with deconstructing the standards together as a team. You can collaborate on the number and types of questions, making sure the test is rigorous yet accessible to all different types of learners. And you also have to make sure those instructions are very clear so all students know exactly what is expected of them. Most importantly, you should come back together as a team and reflect on the assessment and revise it for future use. It's important that the assessments are not just the same over time and they evolve as our students are constantly changing and growing. Let's pause for a moment to reflect. Which strategies we discussed today could you try this week? How are you currently assessing reasoning in your math classroom? And what challenges might you face or are you already facing with assessment in your own classroom or your department? I encourage you to jot down your thoughts or share them with a colleague. If you scan the QR code on the left, I provided a collection of classroom-ready resources. These include rubric templates, assessment samples, and collaboration tools. Feel free to use these and kind of adapt them for your own classroom and your own needs. These are meant to help you because sometimes when you attend a professional development, it seems overwhelming to start from scratch. Once you are finished exploring all those resources, if you could also take a moment to complete the evaluation form, your feedback helps me grow as an educator and as a presenter, so I can make sure my future sessions benefit all teachers. These are the resources that were referenced throughout the presentation. If you're interested in looking into assessment a little bit more, these might be a great place to start. Thank you again for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me or connect with me if you want to continue the conversation about assessment or just secondary mathematics classrooms.